This is a Culture Inject production.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the Nevers Podcast. I'm Tig, and you cannot prove that I'm not a disembodied brain floating in a jar. Today I have the pleasure of being accompanied by the unstoppable duo of intellect and banter, Chirag and Tanisha. Welcome.
Hey.
Thanks for joining me again.
Hello.
Today we are discussing episode 10. Alright, okay, you win. Before we get started, make sure to head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube at HBO The Nevers, and on Twitter at HBO The Nevers and at the Nevers Podcast, PODCST. If you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at theneverspodcast@gmail.com. We always love to hear from our listeners.
So here's a brief recap of the previous episode. So we had Augustus trying to rescue Lavinia, who's buried under rubble, while Amalia and Penance got separated. Amalia follows a string of lights inside the walls and finds Lucy barely alive, who tells her the alien sang to her before dying. Malady has visions of the alien crawling through the tunnels and makes Haig dig a deeper hole. When Amalia and Penance's trek through the tunnels is interrupted by Malady, Amalia deduces that Malady can find the alien. They fight until they see the alien swimming around in a pool, and both swim after it, and the episode ends with the alien overtaking them via a glowing light.
In this week's episode, we learn that Horatio's son is also touched and warns us of a puppet man. Augie and Adair share a kiss while the orange energy uses Adair's drone camera to locate the Galanthe. Malady returns to her old home and total douchebag husband. Lavinia makes it home for a charity luncheon while Augie is about to announce both his ownership of the house and that he is one of the touched. But he's interrupted by Dr. Edmund Haig, and Adair leaves with him. Lavinia has Augie taken away, Myrtle leaves the orphanage, and Horatio kills someone after they take issue with him at a purist bar. Sarah kills her abusive husband, Hugo and Mundy find spikes growing out of Lily's head, and True meets her future self, Zephyr Naveen, in a bar. Quick general thoughts that aren't, holy shit, so much happened in that episode.
Well, first of all, I don't appreciate you guys slandering Sarah's husband. I think he's a swell guy.
Oh, amazing. Fabulous.
No, yeah, he sucks.
No, sorry,
Yeah.
can't do it. I can't even pretend he's not a total tool. I really tried, but I can't help it. What a horrible bastard.
Yeah.
It's in one episode, and he's already my least favourite character in the series.
I'm not gonna lie, he surprised me so fast. It was a good episode. A lot happened. I was just like, oh my goodness, we're really getting into the nitty gritty of this episode for sure. But it was an interesting one.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. I have a couple of non-quick thoughts that I didn't really know how to shove it in elsewhere. So I figure I could just front load it, and then, the chips will fall where they will. But I wanted to mention, a common theme that I noticed in this one. I felt like this whole one, this entire episode was really about gaslighting. And if you guys want to chime in at any point and contribute, I just wanted to mention a couple of instances of it that I noticed. So I feel like almost every character in this one is a terrible person pretending they're not terrible in some kind of way, and making us feel crazy. And I think that
A little bit, yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to describe what happens to Sarah's character, otherwise known as Malady. Because she literally goes into a psych ward and gets diagnosed by a patriarchal system as crazy because her husband gaslights her into craziness. Like, he makes her feel crazy by pretending he loves her. And like, he's like, oh, I'm so glad you're back. Clearly he's not. So like, that's the foundational example I have, but also the case of Horatio. gaslighting his wife by pretending to be a good father and a loyal husband and a healer, but he's really not. Like, he's a bad father, he's a cheater, and he uses his powers in this episode not to heal, but to kill.
In self-defense.
You had me with the first comparison. I think you're being a little mean on Horatio there. Like, she literally says, hey, why are you doing this to your son? Can you stop yourself dreaming? Like, no, that's not how dreams work.
Right.
And you're literally asking for the moon here.
Okay, I'm not calling...
I will give you...
Sorry, go ahead.
He's a cheater, though. I'll give him that.
For sure. I will give you, though, with the whole gaslighting thing, the Lavinia and Augie. For sure. There's some gaslighting going around there.
But real quick on Horatio, I'm not saying he's a bad guy, even though I did kind of say that earlier. I think that he's not bad, but he's duplicitous. He's deceptive, clearly, right?
Yeah.
And he's kind of he's concealing what he's truly capable of and what he truly feels from the world. And I think even though he kills that guy in self-defense, I think that we didn't realize his healing powers were capable of murdering. And
counterpoint, I don't think he realized his powers were capable of murdering until that point.
No,
he was shocked.
No, I think he knows. I think he knows because there's that scene with Bonfire Annie where she says, use your powers the way they're meant to be used when he judges her for teaching the orphanage self-defense. So I think something may have happened where he knows what his powers can do and has decided that he's only going to use it for healing until this scene. Because Bonfire, I think, knows more than she's saying, and she kind of hinted it in this episode, or last episode. I'm getting the two confused a little bit. But I think this is the first time that we've actually seen him use it, but I'm pretty sure it's probably happened before, and if anything, we'd get a flashback about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would split the difference there because I feel like he does know and he doesn't know, and I think that's kind of what the dreams are about. Because a lot of what he's being deceptive about is in his dreams. It's in his subconscious. He's not, I mean, he is conscious of it somewhere, but he's not really conscious of his own kind of darkness, which is all of that violence, all of that infidelity and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I won't talk too long. I'm sorry, but I just have a couple more examples. I'll get to the Augie and Lavinia thing because I think Lavinia is definitely gaslighting Augie by pretending nothing bad happened and that she suddenly likes him and Penance together when we know that's a lie. And then I also wanted to mention the Puppet Man. I feel like that is also an instance of he's gaslighting the world that he's an innocent entertainer when we really know that he's murderous. And then I guess these are like small trivial examples, but Hugo Swan kind of gaslights that servant lady at Masson's house by pretending he's distressed about his father's death. Maybe again.
I would call you on that one. I think he initially went in like, oh, I'm going to distract this lady who he's obviously he's got a prior relationship with her. So he's like, yeah, I'll just distract her. And then it felt a little bit like the lie kind of became a truth about halfway through, because like he was getting all this stuff off his chest, and I think a lot of the things he said there were just things he's wanted to say possibly to other people and didn't quite. I was expecting a full-on breakdown towards the end of that scene when he was like, we kind of really realised what it was he was saying and what he actually felt. But then, obviously, the scene took a different route, but more on that later.
You know what, Tig?
Yeah, I have a distinct suspicion he was almost gaslighting himself, if anyone, in that scene.
I just wanted to highlight something you just said. Scratch everything I just said. I think the running theme is a lie becoming a truth. Is that what you said?
Oh, yeah, no. That's... I
think that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Augie's lie to himself.
That's right.
Indeed. And I think another lie, which will soon turn out, which isn't a truth just yet, but I think will be at some point. We were warned of the Puppet Man, and then shown this puppeteer in the Punch and Judy show that we assumed was the Puppet Man. But I think that's a fake out. I think that they're playing with us. And I think the actual Puppet Man is Dr. Haig, Not because he's controlling people, because he is being controlled. He is literally a puppet man. He is being controlled by a third party. Like, that's the mum voice.
Yeah.
And I think he is going to, like, he is clearly building to some serious shiz.
For a second, I thought you were going to say the little girl, and I was going to be like, okay, that makes sense.
And it's...
Although, maybe.
It's funny because you can even think of that underground factory of the touched people who all got lobotomized as a kind of puppet factory, because they're all being controlled through their brains.
I mean, he did make those sort of zombie robots, what are they called, the shock troopers. They're kind of puppets. But I think that's stretching the point a little bit too far there.
Okay, so does anybody else have any non-quick thoughts?
None that don't fit into the discussion of the episode. Now that we've already sort of started our discussion, let's really dig in and go scene by scene and get it all sorted. Jumping back to our first topic of conversation, Horatio Cousins and his magical son. So Cousins discovered that his son's unique ability is that he can he can see people's dreams, and then he kind of draws them, and they're semi-prophetic, which is always a terrifying power whenever it comes up. The significance of the drawing depicts a mysterious puppet man, and the other drawing he does, which I'm not entirely sure the child understood, is of Horatio cheating on his wife with Amalia. That leads to some interesting conversations. What did you guys think of that particular
I think it's
art?
interesting that Horatio's kid is also touched, because it makes me wonder if there's like a biological link between those who were touched and like their kids and things like that. Like, I know Lord Mason, his daughter is touched, but like we don't really know who her mother is and all that. And then with Horatio being touched and then conveniently his son, like that's very interesting to me, especially with his abilities. I always wondered when I watched that episode and he was explaining how he cannot control it and that he can see everyone's dreams. I wondered what like the range was, like for whose dreams he could see, or if it was like everyone's, or if it's how Amalia's visions are specific to what the Galanthi sends to her. So like she can see specific things to be like, okay, Maladi's coming to get the Galanthi, and those are what her visions are focused on mostly. Or when it was like to find the Galanthi, she saw like the door. Now I wonder with Horatio's son if he sees specific things that are like, here's a warning of what the purists are going to do to the rest of the touch. Keep an eye out, prepare the rest of the orphanage kind of thing.
My mind went down a very similar path. I was wondering if, since Amalia has kind of gone off the deep end and become somewhat unreliable, I was wondering if they were like, all right, she is clearly like a burned asset. Who else do we have that we can possibly... Like, I'm wondering if they were like, once the Galanthi realised that Amalia was kind of done for, if they're like, all right, so how about if we start sending our messages to this kid and say he's got a similar power that we could utilise in that way. And are they now sending him the important updates so he can prepare everyone? Because their previous subject was somewhat useless.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, him, Amalia, and Malady kind of all have similar touched abilities, because they all see things and be warned of things. Like Malady, this episode and episode 9 was probably the first time we could see Malady actually use her touched abilities with her connection to the Galanthi, and we could see that she can physically feel the Galanthi and see through its eyes to some degree. And then Amalia just gets flashed visions of what the Galanthi can see, and now this little boy can actually see what's potentially going to happen, or what people want to happen in their dreams, at least.
Dreams are not truth, though, right? Dreams are generally like wish fulfillment. So I'm wondering if he just has an insight into the character of people as opposed to a predictive power.
Which would kind of tie in with my theory that the puppet man that we met, like the Punch and Judy guy, actually isn't the puppet master that we were seeing in the visions, because that actually was his only prophetic picture, if I recall. The others were mostly to do with things that had already happened and were being dreamt about.
Do you think Horatio's wife knows about
for sure
everything?
For sure.
She does now.
She hinted it when she said, what did she say? She said something like, things a boy should not see, things a boy does not understand. And that could be like the violence of everything, but he's seen the violence himself, like with what's happened to his house. But like when it comes to the coupling of him and this random white lady that he barely knows, that's probably something that he does not understand at all as a young child. Which is interesting to the fact that she is still with him regardless of knowing everything, and the fact, I mean, she spent the entire episode being like, you've been a neglectful father, you're distant, blah, 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 blah. And it's your duty as his father to fix these issues that he's having. But at the same time, she could have left ages ago.
I mean, you'll know, she says, you're being a bad father, you need to do this, this, and this to be a better father. She absolutely did not mention it, and did not at any point refer to him as her husband. Like, she seemed a little bit, she was like, dude, like, obviously me and you, brick wall, but you still have a chance to salvage the relationship with your kid. And obviously she has nowhere to go right now, so she can't actually just pack up her bags and leave. Especially if her kid is now drawing, touched stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she had anywhere else to go, if she went there immediately.
Yeah, and if you look back at her interaction with Amalia in episode 7, it's kind of like amiable and genial and friendly. She doesn't seem to take it personally that her husband is not loyal to her. I think she's a very interesting character, and I felt kind of like the fact that Horatio was getting angry at her. I was like annoyed about that character choice. I don't understand what ammunition he has to get angry at her.
Oh, for not telling him about his son?
About the drawings, yeah.
Mm.
You should be more involved in your son's life if you're going to be angry about not knowing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you'd spent time with your kid, you would have sent them yourself. So.
I think maybe he was mostly mad that he got caught, to be honest. Like, indirectly got caught by his own son, no less. So it's like...
Yeah.
You should have told me he had these drawings and could see my dreams, and maybe I could have hit a couple things.
Can you imagine like that awkward conversation with when your son draws your affairs?
Don't show this to mommy.
We're not putting this one on the refrigerator.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so another plot point up for discussion. Hugo's revelation and Mundy's revelation. So Hugo gets an unexpected visit from Mundy, and they kind of begin to share an objective, which is to get back at Masson. And Mundy reveals that Masson was involved in the death of Mary. So what do you guys think about that?
Mundy and Hugo's relationship is just very interesting. Every time the two of them are on screen together, it's like, it's so weird what their relationship is. Because, like, clearly they've had, like, a romantic relationship in the past, and Mundy is still, like, in the closet and all that. But, like, at the end of the day, Hugo would still, he's trying to prove that he's not part of the life that his father was in, and he's not part of the life that Lord Mason is in. So, of course, he's going to join forces with Mundy, even as a distraction with his father's death, to figure out what Lord Mason has done. But at the same time, I just can't, they're back and forth, like their relationship is just so weird to see on screen for me. It's I can't like put it together, the two of them. But it's interesting. It's interesting. So you have this rugged man and then Hugo.
This might be a reference that not too many people will connect, obviously, but their relationship reminds me of the relationship between Cordelia and Xander at the beginning seasons of Buffy, because they kind of
say that,
pretend to hate each other, but that he really loves like, you know, there's something deeper underneath it.
I mean, the chemistry between the two characters is undeniable. Like, it's such a weird relationship, but when you see so many kind of traditional, in heavy air quotes, relationships in this show that are just crashing and burning with every second, and then you have these two such opposite characters, and it's like, I mean, if it works, maybe we should just let it play out. Like, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of an odd pairing, but can't fault the chemistry. And they're two of the better actors in the show, so anytime we get to see the pair of them just like really cut loose, I'm totally fine with that.
How do you think Hugo took finding out about Mason's involvement with Mary? Because I would consider Mason to be like Hugo's second father, kind of, since his closeness with his last father, and the fact that Mason has literally been pushing Hugo for the last season and a half to be like a better man that his father should be worthy of or whatever. So now that Mason is now seen as this villain in what's happened to Mary, it's interesting to see like Hugo's reaction to that, and everyone's reaction, honestly, that Mason could be this bad guy.
Yeah, Mason does kind of represent Hugo's father, and as much is revealed in the conversation between Hugo and that lady, and she's like, you know, fathers make mistakes, and like Mason is always talking about Hugo being a bad child to a good man, when really the reverse is true, and that's the revelation that Hugo finds when he opens that door and sees his daughter, and which, you know, kind of tying it back to what Tig had said, it's kind of a lie becoming truth. The lie that his daughter is dead, the truth is revealed, and that lie is kind of exposed. You can stop me from talking. I'm going too long.
If you insist. But no, I had something really interesting and appropriate to say, but it's completely left my mind.
Oh, while you think of that, I did have one more thing to say about Mundy and Hugo and the Mary thing. I like the idea that because Mundy and Mary were in a kind of heterosexual relationship that wasn't really working out because Mundy is gay. I like the idea that Mary is kind of indirectly uniting Mundy and Hugo in the pursuit of her, in the pursuit of the plot of her murder. It feels like she's matchmaking from beyond, in a way.
Yeah. Because didn't they break up because she was like, I want you to find your true self or whatever. And he couldn't take that.
I really wish we could have seen a little bit more of Mundy and Mary's relationship. Because it feels like it's a pretty key relationship for him and for this whole arc he's going on. But they had about 10 minutes of screen time, so we really didn't get a chance to see kind of who they were as a couple. Because it's clear that Mundy does have feelings for, like, there is an emotional bond there with him and Mary. But the question is, like, did it ever really go beyond that, or was he just kind of walking the path that he thought he was meant to take? Which is another reason why him and Hugo are such perfect partners, because Hugo is essentially doing the exact opposite. He's intentionally trying to subvert the path he was meant to take. And I think that's why the pair of them are so drawn to each other, because they're like opposite ends of the magnet.
I mean, speaking with other identity revelations, we have Melody's encounter and her identity revelation. Melody with sneaking into her old apartment, and the encounter with Sarah's husband, and then the shocking revelation of Sarah's identity and the subsequent disturbing incident. A lot went down in that house.
Yeah.
I will say like it's been so easy for however long we've been watching this show to root against Melody and her aggression and her violence and her bruteness. And we've, like, at least in my case, I've always just wanted her to go away as much as I love her character. Yeah, because she just kind of shows up and beats up our protagonists and kidnaps Mary, and, you know, she's been the villain of the show, and she's designed for us to understand her, but also want her to lose. But I think in this episode, seeing the Sarah side, it's an interesting reversal where now I kind of found myself rooting for Malady to come back. Like, now we understand why Malady is needed.
Can I say that scene when she comes out of the water was so beautiful for me? Because when she's in the water, or like when she first gets into the water, we see her as that character of Malady, and she has like all that stuff in her face, and her hair is a mess, and she just looks like the character Malady. And then when she comes out, she really does look like Sarah. And then she's walking throughout the streets and she just looks so confused. And for a second, I thought Sarah really did come back. So when she's interacting with her husband, and we see his true character, and her eyes start glowing with like the pain that she inflicts on herself, and she slowly starts coming back into herself and that character of Malady. I thought that was done so smoothly this episode, and it was really good to watch.
Agreed on every count. But two interesting points that kind of go alongside of that. It actually took me a second when she first came out of the water. I was like, wait, who is that? Because I didn't recognise her without the whole kind of Malady persona. And then, yeah, she had a brilliant sequence of her walking through and kind of getting to the house. And the part where she's like poking her face and looking in the mirror. So brilliantly done. And I think an excellent performance from Malady in that particular scene. But I have a bit of a pet theory that ties in with my theory from previous podcasts where I was saying about how I think she's got like a traveller living in her head. I think for the start of this episode, that was Sarah. I think her initial persona kind of came back and she was completely spaced out because she'd been fighting this kind of split personality for however long, and she was back in complete control of herself, and so her brain switched off because she didn't really know how to cope with the situation she found herself in. So her feet just kind of automatically, you know, when you've had a few and you're walking home and you're like, oh, how'd I get home? Like, I think her brain just switched off and she started walking and found herself back home, went inside, ran into her husband, who is a colossal tool bag. He started doing his usual tool shit. And that's when her brain was like, all right, you know, the host's in danger, time to activate the Malady protocols. And she came back and did what she did. And speaking of her toolbag husband, I don't know why, but his line that made me crack up in the worst possible way when he's talking, he's like, oh, I was so sad. Like, you were just so unreasonably sad all the time. And I tried everything to cheer you up and it didn't work. And I'm like, yeah, how much do you want to bet? His try everything to cheer her up was beat her, drink loads, not talk to her, probably like sexually assault her. Like, I everything about his character was like, oh, I tried my best to make you happy, by which he means I tried my best to make me happy and hoped that would make you happy too.
When she finds the documents that he basically like sold her over, and like, because I was trying to like pause the screen and read it, and it was basically that he was getting compensation for basically selling her to Dr. Haig. And Dr. Haig is really what made Malady, to be honest, because that's like her protective mechanism against him, and how she broke in those 2 years that he had her. So I thought it was so sad to see, because I remember in season 1 when we were getting the flashbacks of Sarah to begin with, and she's in the institution with Amalia. She was so happy to marry her husband. Like when they were talking in the institute, and she was talking about how he was going to take her away, and everything was going to be different, and that she was healed and it was fine. And then she had that interaction with Haig, but we thought that, like, I thought at least that had just like continued from there, but instead she had got to go with her husband, continue that fantasy, and then had her husband turn on her and basically sell her off to Haig in the end, this demon figure that's created the version of her. And it's so funny when he first, like, when her husband and him, like, first get together, he's, like, looking her over, and he looks at her teeth, and he's like, those are gonna have to go, and we're gonna have to fix this, and you're gonna have to change your clothes. And I was like, wow, he really just was, like, so controlling of her entire being. And Sarah, at the time, probably just didn't even realize that, and did exactly what we saw when she would feed him, and she would do anything to make him happy, and that didn't matter to him if she made a mistake or something.
That whole scene with the dinner and the plate drop was just so messed up on so many levels. Brilliantly played scene, but very, very hard to watch. Next up, we have tension and revelations at Bidlow Manor. Augie takes charge of Lavinia's fundraiser and shares an unexpected kiss. The unnoticed activation of Penance's weird gadget thing and the apparatus and drones and whatnot, and a mysterious phone call to Haig and the involvement of a mystery voice. Yeah, that was the whole sort of Augie Lavinia arc. This episode was particularly crazy, but
there was amount of times I was like, Augie 1, Lavinia 0.
It was so good.
Well, so is his mother like an electric ghost? Like, I don't understand what those orange currents were.
I'm still operating under the theory that she's a future voice, and she's the orange blasts or whatever they are her kind of taking control of machines from the future. Can
we talk about really quick the CSI like level droning camera? That I mean I can believe in shock troopers and mutated superpowers, but there's no I just can't believe that exists or could ever.
You don't believe that Penance could make a drone to look over the city and find Amalia? There's no way. That's her entire trouble. She has to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
There's just something so ridiculous about a Victorian drone.
I kind of wish we'd seen the actual drone.
Yeah.
I bet it would have looked awesome.
The fact that it was in black and white too was just good stuff.
Yeah. I was saying, like, it's those little touches that you see it, like, yeah, on the whole, the kind of effects and everything are pretty good, but, like, you see the occasional bit and you're like, it doesn't quite work. But there was something about the way the kind of the drone was set up that was just, everything about it was perfect. Like, it looked like kind of an old daguerreotype. Like, each picture was like a dodgy old black and white, slightly grainy photo, but then it would, like, flick to the next one. And it almost as if she was scrolling through a gallery, but it was like flying a drone around. It was just so brilliantly absurd. I loved it.
I think when it comes to like the CGI aspects of the show, I liked that. So I like that they used what we knew to like connect the whole telephone thing. So they used how we see Penance see like the electricity move around, and that's how she was able to see the telephones to begin with. We're able to see that again to how we were able to turn back on the machines to pinpoint where the Galanthi is. So it was like, although we wouldn't have noticed, like if they didn't use like the lighting the way that they did, we wouldn't have noticed like it turn on, but we got to experience Penance's troubled and how the Galanthi was able to do it and pinpoint where it is from like an outer body experience. Now when it comes to how Haig was able to get his little phone call, still confused about it. I know it is somebody from the future. It has to be, because it's not Melody anymore. It's somebody else. But like, how do they know where Haig is at every point?
That was the creepy.
Like, he was walking by the street, and they were like, "Telephone call for you." Is it?
That was such a great scene. It's so weird.
Myrtle's departure and Bonfire Annie's discovery. So we have Myrtle's emotional departure from the orphanage, and we have Bonfire Annie learning about the bill in Congress that's about to forbid all of the touch from gathering and the implications of the bill. So what do you guys think about that?
Myrtle's story, it's very interesting because in the beginning of the episode or mid-episode, we see Myrtle like really upset about what Amalia has done, her disappearance, her lack of leadership, and then Bonfire tries to talk to her and that doesn't work out, and so she decides to leave again. So it's kind of like another Myrtle's day out, but this time indefinitely. And I think it was very weird that for her to come back into the world again after what has happened was to hold hands with a Maladi character and start dancing in the streets. Like, that's like the last time we see Myrtle in this episode, which is very interesting compared to like what we've been thinking of what Myrtle's like future arc is going to be, and how she needs guidance and a mother, and you know who's going to be her leader going forward. And then now we have her in this frolicking in the streets. Like, I don't understand what's going on with Myrtle, and we only have 2 more episodes to figure out what's going to happen with Myrtle. So I'm very interested to see how they're going to take that.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of hard for us to work out what they're doing with Myrtle because the writers don't seem to know what they're doing with Myrtle. It's like, generally the story arcs in this back half have been fairly kind of delineated. It's quite there's clear paths of where everyone's going, and then there's Myrtle, which I suppose is fairly appropriate considering her whole thing is inability to communicate. But I mean, like you said, it's just we get kind of a redux of her previous plot points, but now she's off dancing with the maladies. What is going on here? What is any of it? And like her tearful goodbye with Primrose, I believe was her name, the giantess. It's like, it wasn't really particularly emotional because we haven't really had any time to get to know either of these characters. It's like, I'm sure this would be really sad if we gave a damn about either of them, but I mean, I barely care about Myrtle because she's quite interesting, and I have literally zero care for Primrose. So it kind of robs the scene of any, plus the CGI was really dodgy in that scene. So it just makes the whole thing seem a little like they just needed 5 minutes of filler, so they gave us a tearful goodbye that we don't care about.
Can I say something? I have a nitpicky grievance about that particular scene. I think, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think Primrose kind of like asks, why can't you stay? And then the camera cuts to Myrtle and she goes on like a 40-second foreign language monologue. I just feel like that would have been so much better if she just didn't say anything and Primrose just understood from the silence that you can't stay. I don't know why they have to. They don't use that very. They haven't used her powers very well, just narratively. And you know, just like you were saying, Tag, it's understanding Myrtle as a character is literally like trying to understand a foreign language. It doesn't really make sense to me what she's doing or where she's going.
It's crazy that we've just had such like back and forth with Myrtle, specifically because this second half of the season is the most we've ever learned or been part of Myrtle's life, like since the start of the Nevers. So now it's like, what is her focus? Like, what is the reason that we keep going back to Myrtle? We've had her connection with the Galanthi. The first moment we were able to like see her speak English and like understand her, and now, yeah, she's growing. Like, is it supposed to be like she's going through a pubescent like adult phase? Like, I don't understand with her character, to be honest. And
rebellious teenage years.
Exactly. And then we have the whole, like, I get her leaving because she feels like she's not understood. Bonfire Annie is not the leader she wants. Amalia isn't the leader she can get. And so she decides to leave again. But you would think that she would want to stay, seeing as the last time she left, she killed someone. And so it's very interesting that she would leave again and then fall into the hands of, like, a fake malady, or specifically now when it's the orphanage against the purists. Why is this the time that we're leaving? It just didn't make sense to me, her leaving the orphanage at this time. And then now that we have the whole bill that's supposed to supposedly separate the touched from ever unifying together, that was an interesting take, because that's their whole thing, was the orphanage and them being together and them presenting as a united front against the purists and against the city as a whole. And now this bill might actually go through with the help of Lavinia, no less. That would suck.
Yeah, they're gonna have to. They were already gonna have to fight an army of mercenaries, and it looks like now they're gonna have to fight like an army of lawyers and also the government. So it's all we're kind of heading into the darkest. What is it called? The darkest part of the
timeline.
Yeah, the darkest timeline.
I think it was particularly annoying having the whole kind of Myrtle nonsense in counterpoint to Bonfire Annie, who has gone on the path we expected her to, where she's kind of becoming the de facto leader of the Touch and is kind of rallying the troops and seemingly doing a pretty good job of it. Like, I would much rather have seen an arc of those two kind of growing closer and Myrtle realising that Annie is actually kind of the one she needs to be paying attention to because she's a much more capable leader than Amalia was, but we didn't get that.
Or if her not choosing Bonfire Annie, then, and not choosing Amalia, then, like, I don't know, something ridiculous like her choosing herself at the end of
that would also work.
The show or something like that. But she didn't even give Bonfire really a chance this episode. Like, they had that scene together where Bonfire tries to talk to her and tell her to channel her anger into something better and more useful, and
great scene.
She didn't really take that to heart or really acknowledge it. Instead, she kind of like tells Bonfire to like go screw herself and then leaves. So,
you know, it kind of makes sense now that I think of it that she ends up with the maladies, because what does she have in common with Malady? They both were failed by the system that was supposed to protect and rehabilitate them. And also, it seems like this is the point in the season where all of the characters are supposed to be making the bad choices. Like, Penance going with Haig is clearly the bad choice to make. And, you know, Augie getting abducted, that's clearly a bad choice for Lavinia to have made. So, you know, I think all of the characters are kind
R.I.P.
of
Lucy.
doing the wrong thing. Yeah.
I think Lavinia's just protecting herself, though. Is it the right... If she didn't want to push Augie over the edge, this is probably the thing that would actually do it. But I see her motivations for why she did it.
Speaking of, the next arc is Lavinia's manipulations and Haig's revelations, which is a very fun sentence to say. We have Lavinia's meeting with Lord Masson and the production of the promised evidence, which is the shocking reveal that there was actually a photograph of the Galanthe egg and its significance. Haig's true identity revelation and the surprising decisions made by Penance. I have to say, this was the dinner party, wasn't it? Yeah, that whole scene was just so good. Every part of that scene and every person in that scene was fantastic. The bit for me that I really, really enjoyed, but at the same time it was a bit like, here's what you could have won, was Augie's kind of little mini character arc throughout that whole scene, because it's just a perfect counterpoint to the previous scene of Sarah and her douchebag husband. And it's like, we're literally seeing their future. Augie is on the path to being that gaslighting dickhead that we've seen him grow into. And yeah, it's good seeing. Like, it's great to the actor give him a chance to really flex his muscles and, you know, get his douchebag on. These are all good things. But I can't help but think, if this was season 1 and, you know, they, Augie and Penance are together and it's great, they're the adorable couple, you know, she's smart, he's rich, brilliant combination, they're clearly in love, isn't that sweet? They're just being kind of nice in a corner, then boom, he's got to take over. He's got to run the friggin' orphanage. He's got to, become who he's meant to be. And then slowly over the course of like probably the second season, we see him start to get a bit more of a dick. Like he snaps at Penance more. He becomes a lot more controlling. Because we saw in this, like just in that one little lunch, he was like, "Why are you talking to that guy? Not talking to me. I'm your boyfriend. You should be paying attention to me." Like we see a bit more of that. We see him start to really kind of, tighten the thumb screws. And then kind of maybe towards the end of season 2 or like the mid-season break of season 3, we get the revelation that he also used to, vivisect birds. And then it's like, oh damn, this guy's actually kind of a psychopath. But by this point, like, him and Penance are like married. They've got a kid on the way. Like, she's inextricably connected to him. And now suddenly, like 3 years in, we get this revelation that he's a complete psychopath. And that would have just been like, that would have broken the internet. That would have been an amazing reveal. And while it was great seeing this kind of play out in microcosm around one incredibly awkward dinner, it was like everyone is doing their best here and they're great. But it just, much like Myrtle's departure, it just lacks the weight because it feels like they've tried to put 2 or 3 seasons of character development into one dinner party. And it's kind of sad.
I'm not gonna lie, I liked in that scene when Lavinia and Augie are literally staring each other down like daggers, and then you just have Haig coming in like, "Thank you so much for inviting me for the dinner."
Yeah. Agent of Chaos Haig, here to mess some stuff up.
Yeah. I want to know, like, what's his... I don't know if I missed it when I was watching the episode, but, like, what is his reason for going for Penance first? In this, I couldn't get it. Like, it's going to, of course, bring Amalia running after her, and I want to know what they told him on the phone and how she's like the next piece of the puzzle for whatever they have setting up.
Yeah, I think she's going to become his weapons manufacturer.
I'm wondering if he needs her to like perfect the shock troopers, so that when they then have to like enforce, because let's be real here, we all know that the bill is going to pass, especially now that frickin' Lavinia's on side. Like, that bill is going to pass. We're going to get our battle of the orphanage where they have to break up the orphanage and disperse all the touched. And I'm wondering if there's going to like just this army of sort of doom bots, like Hagen's Penance, working together to construct this army of monstrosities, and they're just going to charge in and be horrible.
You know what?
I wonder if they're going to use that song that they played a couple episodes ago, and then Penance was just like, she was so absorbed in the song that she couldn't even like hear Amalia, and it was just we saw the waves of like current of electricity or whatever. I wonder if they're going to use that for her to make whatever it is that needs to be made for them to win.
You know what, I think, going back to the idea of this being the turn of the Victorian age and kind of like collapsing headfirst into the 1900s and World War I and World War II, I feel like the original intention with Penance was for her to be a kind of Oppenheimer-like figure. And like, if you look at it through that lens, the Galanthe would be maybe, I don't know, the nuclear bomb or whatever, just like plutonium, and the radioactiveness of that is what mutates everybody with all of these unique powers. But it's, on one hand, it's hope because it can end the war and it can end all future wars, because once that power is harnessed by man and woman and person kind, there's never going to be, nobody wants, it's self-assured destruction. But on the other hand, it's assured destruction. Like, it's the apocalypse. It's a dystopia. It's a radioactive wasteland. So I feel like at least my desire was to see her accidentally invent the thing that causes the horrible future that Amalia comes from.
With that in mind, you guys remember when we were finally getting, like, Zephyr's flashback of everything, and when they were all inside of the spaceship or whatever, they were scared about that bomb that was coming to, like, nuke them all? Like, what if it's that? Like, that nuclear thing.
The penance special.
That she makes to fully kill all of the Galanthi once and for all.
Oh, yeah.
I could definitely see that happening.
And that's why her name is Penance. Because she's committed a sin that she needs to repent.
I'm still on board for evil penance. I'm ready for that arc to happen. And if it's
Ooh, or what if, kind of a reverse Tara situation? What if, like, using the season path I'd plotted out before, he gets his full kind of revelation of his evilness. She gets kind of caught up in that. Amalia rightfully kills Augie because he's a crazy. And that sets Penance off and makes her go full dark side. Like, everyone's like, why are you not happy we killed your horrible husband? And she's like, he was never horrible to me. You're just crazy and jealous. Psychopath time. Doombots.
You're making me want to watch this show. That sounds great.
Do you think for the bill, do you think that they're gonna show the orb to people and be like, this is what we're fighting against?
Yeah, how is that evidence that's gonna make it pass? I don't understand.
Like, maybe if they see it, they'll be afraid of it more. But at this point, the Galanti's already been birthed. So it's like, what do you have now?
Lies.
Yeah.
One did all that horrible stuff. It's now laying eggs all over the town. There's going to be thousands more of the Touched if we don't stop them now.
Speaking of manipulators, Cousins, the Puppeteer, and the Beggar King are having their own storyline right now. So Cousins is following the Puppeteer and the encounter at the bar, and the confrontation with the Beggar King and the display of Cousins' powers. All that happened in about 5 minutes span.
I had two main reactions from that scene. One, when he kind of unleashed the pain and sliced that guy up. It really reminded me, one of my all-time favourite series, and it's a show I will never stop talking about, is a series called Bleach. It's a manga. And there's a character in that called Hanataro, who is like the archetypal healer. He's completely useless in combat. Like he's terrified of everyone. But his sword's power, he just touches it to people and it absorbs their wounds. And everyone's like, I mean, yeah, it's a useful power, but it's pointless in combat. Little do they know, when it taps the wounds, it doesn't completely just erase them. It stores the damage inside itself, and once the little bar on the side is filled from absorbing enough damage, it like transforms, and you can just tap someone with it, and it puts all that damage out into them. I'm wondering if Cousins has a similar thing where, like, every time he heals someone, he's not just like completely removing their damage from existence. He's kind of storing it all within himself, which, to be fair, would explain his mood a little bit, but that's going a little bit too far in there. But he stores all this damage and can then like put it out onto someone else when he feels threatened. Like, it would be interesting to go back and see if the marks on the guy's face lined up with injuries we'd seen him heal, but I mean, that's just way too much work. I'm just going to assume that it does because that's more fun.
Well, if that's the case, like Amalia is infinite ammunition in his chamber.
Exactly.
The amount of damage.
It does kind of make them the perfect couple. And then kind of my second reaction to that scene was, I just fucking love the Beggar King. I'm sorry. He's such a boss. Like, Cousins is fighting for his freaking life, unleashes this horrible power, and the camera just zooms out and you just see him standing there like, that'll do. That'll do. And then he just wanders off, like, not a word said, not a fuck given, just, yep, I've got a use for that, and then walks away. So good.
I wonder how the Beggar King will use that, because he there's no reason we saw him just for him to like disappear at the end of that scene. Like, he's either telling somebody what he saw, which doesn't seem like him, because it has to be like a tit for tat kind of thing. Like, I'll tell you when I know if you give me something. Or he's going to try to use it for himself. But I also kind of try to like remember that the deal that the Beggar King still has a deal with Lord Mason. Now he has a deal with the Purists, and he still has a deal with the orphanage. So it's like you kind of don't know which way the Beggar King's really going to go, especially if there's like a war actually incoming on all sides right now.
I forgot he still had some kind of prior credit with the orphanage. So he really does have a dirty, grubby little finger in just about every pie in London. Which kind of makes me feel like he's going to do nothing for a very long time and then jump in on the side of the person that's winning and help them win. And then be like, yeah, I'm on your side now because you won.
Well, if like the orphanage is like, hey, you need to help us with the Purists, this is what's going to happen. Then the Beggar King could be like, well, I saw Horatio do this, so I will help you if you let me use him a couple times, and then I'll bring him back. So that would be something I could see happening.
That is
I can see him kind of bringing Horatio to the dark side explicitly. I think it would be really funny if the finale of this whole thing is just every character going to the dark side in their own way. And it's just everybody goes evil. There's no more good guys left.
There are no good people.
It feels like it's going that way, to be honest. Everyone that I thought... If you look at Augie, you're like, wow, Augie's so sweet, so nice, the nicest character. And now it's like, actually, Augie would probably kill you with, like, the ravens he's controlling. Like, there's no in-between for any character right now. They all could be evil. And if Penance really does go full Tara, then even better. Because she's the second one in, like, the level of niceness. She's probably, like, the one you wouldn't expect if she turned evil. So if she did, then it'd be like, wow, who saw it coming?
And then, just for balance, because it's always hilarious when they do that, the only two characters that don't fall to the dark side are Malady and Annie Carby, who were the two that were initially kind of the sort of evil one. Obviously, Malady was always kind of the antagonist, if not villain. And then Annie was kind of her second in command. If those are the only two that don't end up falling to the dark side, that would be quite hilarious.
Yeah. Melody's like, actually, this is not what I had in mind. God did not tell me this. Not all of this. That'd be funny.
Let's talk about Melody's actions and her husband's fate. So her interaction with her husband and the unsettling turn of events, we saw that happen, and then the dramatic outcome of the encounter and its implications for Malady. So do we think that she just goes back full steam into Maladying, or does that change her, or what's going on?
I just can't shake the feeling that she was Sarah up until kind of almost that. Like, even the way she was speaking was completely different up until that particular clash. And I think that she is, like, Malady did kind of step in to protect her, but the change is not complete. I have a feeling that episode 11 there's going to be kind of we're going to see a lot of the internal struggle with Malady, and who knows what side will win, but I don't care because the husband's dead and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I was really happy that, you know, she took him out. That was a great scene. I thought it was really well done because, like, we see her, like, literally stabbing herself to come back into that version of Malady. Like, she's using that pain to come back. And then she has enough energy to kill him with a pillow, where it makes me think that she's not fully Malady, because I feel like if it was her, she would have done it a lot more brutal. Instead, she just, like, put a pillow over his head and then, like, killed him that way. So it would be interesting to see if she wasn't fully back. And I think the next episode, we might be working on her fully coming back to Malady and Amalia fully coming back to herself now that she's talking to the different versions of herself that we saw at the bar. So it'd be like Amalia coming back to who Amalia is, and Malady coming back truly to who she is and what their missions are together.
You know,
Agreed.
I gotta say, like, on this point, this is probably my chief disappointment, which is that the way that she kind of dispatches her husband in this episode as Malady is great, but contrasted with how her encounter with Haig went, I just found that so underwhelming. And that was Malady, that was proper Malady, and she didn't really do anything to Haig necessarily. I mean, she beat him up a little bit, but I feel like what would have been a lot more effective is if it wasn't Malady who killed her husband, but it was Sarah. I think I wanted to see her kind of tremble. I wanted to see her kind of hold that knife and tiptoe and feel vulnerable and weak and still do it without the Malady. And I think that would have been more effective because we already saw Malady confronting her abuser when the Haig thing happened earlier in the season. And that was, we already know what that's like. So this either feels redundant or it's just poorly executed, as satisfying as it is. I don't know. I'm going to stop talking again.
I mean, maybe when I watch the scene and like the more I talk about it, if you guys have watched Moon Knight, the Marvel show, it's kind of like that when he finds out that like this big bad guy that's been taking over his body for so long is actually just a coping mechanism that he's made to like protect himself from the abuse that he's grown into. So now with Malady, maybe it was Sarah. Maybe it was Sarah like fully accepting Malady at that point and letting her do whatever she wanted to do to her husband and get over it. Because there was that scene before she was officially Malady when he mentions her name and she drops the plate, and then we get to that whole abuse stage. So like there was like a connection there where she does know that there's like another person within her. She just wanted to go back into like this little life, and now that she couldn't get the life that she wanted and couldn't like continue on as Sarah, and realize that like regardless she's still going to be in a terrible situation with somebody who's going to abuse her or sell her and basically have another Haig on her life. She just decided like, hey, let Malady take over. If she wants to kill him, she can kill him. This was clearly supposed to be my life at the end of the day. So maybe we'll have like a Malady like 2.0 now, like a different version of her that we didn't see before, which honestly that actress she could play
for
a
sure.
Malady 2.0.
Yeah, she could pull it off.
Yeah.
Since there's been kind of a recurring theme, particularly with her and with Amalia, on kind of their internal conflict and their indecision about what to do next, it would be quite interesting, to borrow your phrase, to have them both go through these pivotal moments and have like Malady and Amalia 2.0 for episode 11 and 12. Like Malady has kind of essentially said goodbye to both parties. Like she's had her moment with both the people that wronged both Sarah and Malady and has been able to move past them. And maybe now she will kind of, the disparate parts of her personality will merge and we'll get a kind of more focused, infinitely more terrifying Malady. And then depending on how the start of the next episode goes with Zephyr, we may get the disparate parts of Amalia having a little bit of a chinwag and setting their own path there. So yeah, there is a very good chance that we're going to see two more focused leads in episode 11, and that can only end well for us and terribly for both of them.
You know what I'm gonna hate about the whole like Zephyr, Amalia, and whoever the third person is? We're gonna go back down that entire storyline about how Amalia needs to accept who she is and learn to lean on other people, and like we've already been through that before, like in the first part of season 1. So if we have to go through that again in the next 2 episodes, and we only have 2 episodes left, I'm gonna be so mad. Not gonna lie, because we've already done it once. And there was that whole scene with, like, her saying goodbye to Penance and running off. And now if it's going to be, like, this is your place with whether you're going to go home or if you're going to stay and who you really are kind of thing, like, that's going to be a waste of an episode.
Yeah, they have to do something different. It has to be something bigger and more kind of, not rewarding is probably the wrong word, but if we just get a retread of her sort of epiphany moment from the first half, yeah, there's tables are going to be thrown at TVs.
Yeah. Like, I guess, like, with the whole Sarah and Malady thing, like, say this was the only episode we have with, like, their growth and their version into 2.0, and then that's it. Then that was, like, you know, pretty cute. It was pretty short, and then it was, like, in and out kind of thing, and we could analyze that however way you want to take it, that she is going to come out the other side a version of Sarah and a version of Malady that we didn't expect. Like, expect whether, like, darker or, you know, more forgiving, whatever. Now, with, like, Amalia's situation, if we just, like, set up this entire thing, because I know for a fact it's probably going to take up a majority of the episode. Like, there's no way it's not going to. But if it all just ends with, like, this is your home, too. Because the whole, like, this entire time in this episode, it was kind of like, I don't know what my home is. I don't know where my home is, where I belong, etc., etc. So if it ends with her being like, this is my home, and this is what I have to do for the Galanthi, it'll just be like, just like shoving a whole bunch of things in like 2 episodes that we already knew from like a whole season and a half ago. Hoping it doesn't happen like that. Hoping she comes back. If she does come out as a Amalia 2.0, that it's like darker and stronger and like, I don't know, pushes the story better.
If you had to predict the ideal ending for you of this character, what would you, like if you were the head writer, what would you create?
I'd probably kill her off. Well, if I didn't have the second season, I'd probably kill her at the end of this season, I'm not gonna lie. And like either have the old Amalia come back and have Zephyr leave the body kind of situation and end it there, or like have us go back to the future and have it be a brand new future that wasn't what we left the future as.
Oh, like Zephyr wakes up in the future and there's like sunflowers.
But it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the way I'd go. We see, they save the world, they fix everything, and then Zephyr / Amalia is talking to Penance. They've only just reunited. They're both on their separate paths, and like the last 5 minutes of the episode, but of the confrontation, they get together again. And it's almost a death scene as we see Zephyr kind of vanish. Like, we fixed my future. I never came back. It's all done. Bye. Ugh, dead. Screen cuts to black. Slowly like brightens up. We see a picturesque future. Everything looks great. Everyone's happy. And then we just hear kind of some laughter off screen. Camera pans around, and you just see sort of Stripe, Zephyr, or whatever her name is at that point, looking really happy and like, it's like, isn't life great? And then you just finish on like her sort of smiling, like everything is better.
I'd just love to see like a different future. Like either you'd see like more Galanthi, or you'd see like, I don't know, something different than what she left off with, so that she can find a different version of her. She can move on and grow as whatever version of herself we get left off with in this new world that the Galanthi and her were able to save. Blah blah. I mean, such like a story ending, like soppy story ending, but like it'd be better. Either she's going to die and that would be it, or like she dies and goes into the future, or she stays and the past is what the past is and they make the future together kind of thing. There's like those 3 options only, really.
There is a secret hidden 4th option.
What's the 4th option?
Everyone dies and darkness wins.
Yeah. It'll be Augie, the last survivor. And then birds will just fly into the screen and close them.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd definitely agree with that.
So we have Hugo, Mundy, and Mason's daughter. So Hugo and Mundy plan to confront Mason at his estate. The unexpected discovery of Mason's daughter and her transformation is revealed. What did you guys think of that scene?
Hilarious.
So funny.
Hilarious?
Yeah. Skipping over the kind of Hugo, 2 truths and a lie, accidental confession. Just Mundy is a police officer. He's like a detective. He's meant to be, like, to really know his shit. And then he teams up with Hugo to break into this house, and it's just the most pathetic, ill-thought-out, bumbling plan you could imagine. And, like, it just falls apart from almost the first second they try and put it into play. And there's a ridiculous scene where Hugo's sitting there talking to this poor woman who just wants to get on with her job. And he keeps hearing these bumps and thumps. He's like, oh, God, Mundy's messing us up. I have to talk louder for no reason. And then the woman's just like, I'm terrified here because this says bumping and thumping, and that's the friggin' locked, the touch locked up in the basement. I've got to try and cover for that. It's like, no one is happy about that situation, and no one really knows. And then it's just, it all falls apart, and then we see a porcupine, and it's like, no, everyone here is an idiot. I'm sorry.
Did you guys read the book that Mundy was holding? I did freeze it and try to like read the frame. And I read that it was like something like finding the cure for the touch that like Mason was probably looking for his daughter. I couldn't read it too deep. That cursive was very strong, but it looked like they were looking for a cure for his daughter. But to see her in the cellar, like we finally get the reveal from all the bangings and stuff, and to see her just so, I think she's the only one mostly physically, like full body physically touched that we've seen so far. Like Primrose is tall, and then we have like the porcupine guy that we saw this episode. But I think his daughter's the only one that we've been like, wow, can't hide that one. She definitely needs to be in the cellar.
Martin Ford's character, the sort of the big fish guy. But I mean, you could throw a cape on him.
Yeah.
And you'd be fine. He was the most physically changed, but not in an inhuman way. Although it was kind of implied he smelled, but a lot of people smell. It's fine. We never seen physical transformation on the level of Mason's daughter, who was like Night King mixed with Darth Maul. It was pretty awesome. I can't lie.
That's a good description. Yeah. Did you guys did that thumping thing remind you of that Edgar Allan Poe thing? You know, the heart under the
Telltale Hearts.
Yeah, Telltale Hearts. Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
And also that girl is she's going to be like Beast from X-Men.
Although hopefully not current era Beast, who's been a bit of a scallywag recently. He's not been very nice. Yeah, he's not been a very good guy since arriving on Krakoa. But hopefully she will not take that path. And then, yeah, the last big terrifying encounter for the episode was Lavinia's betrayal and Amalia's encounter. Lavinia's scheme involving Augustus and his shocking fate, and Amalia's emergence from the river and encounter with future Stripe. So, yeah, there are a number of ways I could have seen that dinner party and kind of Lavinia versus Augie ending. None of them involved him being carted away in a straitjacket. That was not a clever move from Lavinia. That is going to come back to bite her and everyone.
And I feel like this is something she's had planned for a while, because all she had to do was make a call. And she was like, just come. It's fine. We've already talked about this. Just come. And at the end of the party, she was like, look, our guests have arrived. And then they just grab him like that. Yeah. I thought he was going to use his touch powers to really just go for Lavinia at that point. Like, you heard the birds, like, screaming in the background, and as he's being carted away, I really thought he was going to be like, well, time to go full evil and take my sister out once and for all. And I would have honestly been happy about it, because if what Lavinia has been saying this entire episode is true, and from what we've seen, like that scene in the underground where he like turns around and he's just like full dark face, like, Lavinia, I don't know what you're talking about. I would have loved for him to be like, you tried to take me, but you failed. Like, and then just overpower Lavinia, or like have her be the one in the straitjacket. Like have him like reveal her mastermind plans of like the dead bodies underneath the earth, like kind of thing, and then fully take over. Like that would have been amazing to see.
Yeah, that would have been a real kind of ending of Godfather 1 type moment, where it would have been much better than what actually happens. Yeah, kind of the doctors swoop in and Lavinia's like, I'm sorry, I'm afraid you're leaving now, Augie. And then he's like, or am I? And they just walk past him and grab her. Like, sorry, lady, you are batshit crazy. We're taking you away. Gonna lock you up with all your former experiments. It's going to end badly for you.
I'm not gonna lie, the reveal that it was actually Augie who paralyzed Lavinia this episode was kind of shocking to me, because the entire time I was like listening to that lie that Lavinia has been giving out, that it was like a terrible car crash, etc., etc., but for it to actually be Augie who pushed her because she destroyed his little aviary, that was pretty crazy for me. And he was like, it was an accident. I was like, that didn't look like an accident, but...
The only accident there is that she survived, you crazy bastard.
And then when he's like walking back and he's like, oh my god, what are you doing? She could be dead. And then he's like, or she could be alive. Like, that could be worse. But I wonder how he's going to get out and how that's going to change. Like, that would be perfect, like, into season 2... Augie getting out, the repercussions of that, blah, blah, blah. But, like, in 2 episodes, he's either going to get out next episode, and then we'll see what he does from there into, like, episode 12. That'll be, like, his final scenes. Or he's going to be in the asylum for, like, 2 episodes, and then what? Melody reaches her hands out and, like, picks him up from where she once was. Like, that could also end like that. That
could be quite good. There'll be a good, nice amount of symmetry there. But no, I think you were right about how he'll escape. You were just wrong about the timing. It's not going to be kind of he's being carted away and he's causing the birds. He's going to be driving away in the carriage, and they're going to kind of get just outside of the house, and the birds are going to swoop in, take out the drivers, and then he's going to leave to be... Because, yeah, as you said, there's not enough time for them to really do a decent kind of he goes to the asylum and then comes out arc. So just he gets out of the house, he escapes.
Yeah. And then,
like,
and that
2
pushes
minutes
him to
later,
full dark side. Like, next episode, we'll see him see, like, Lavinia again. It'll be like a reversal thing. Like, how he was shocked to see Lavinia in the house, and now it'll be like, Lavinia, it's been so long since the party.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, classic.
Yeah. I hope that there's, because I'm assuming that at some point they were planning on having the mercenaries and the shock troopers and the touched in a kind of Avengers Endgame battle on a field somewhere. It would have been cool to see just an army of birds like flying like projectiles down. Yeah, because they all, at the end of the day, like in the either it's gonna well, when would the battle happen? It would either have to happen like end of episode 11, start of episode 12 kind of thing, which means we're gonna have to bring back all of our players immediately. Like, Amalia's gonna have to figure it out, come back. We're gonna have to grab Myrtle. We're gonna have to grab Penance from wherever she is. We're gonna have to grab, like, literally every character for us to have that big battle and then end in episode 12.
Yeah. Do we know how long the last 2 episodes are? Because if they're like 60 to 75 minutes, it's possible. But if they're like 45, we're screwed.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining a big battlescape now, and then the sky gets darker, and then you just see kind of the camera pans up, and you just see Augie being lowered onto the field by like a big swarm of birds. He's got his hands out, kind of all Messiah style, and there's just a row of birds with their claws sunk into his sleeves, lowering him down onto the battlefield. Like, you thought you could lock me up? You're insane. Bird strike, and flying birds.
And then you just see like Lavinia in the distance watching him come down with like fear on her face.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see the sun blotted out by a cloud of birds. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah. That would be amazing. I'm not gonna lie, if we're gonna compare them to the Avengers and that Avengers like Endgame scene specifically, I would picture like Bonfire Annie as Captain America with like a glow of fire in her hand as like the sun is, and it's like she's like surrounded and stuff, and like the sun goes like blacks out, and then you just see like the fireball in her hand and Augie just like coming down like, I got you, it's okay.
That would be freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Augie would be kind of the Thanos in that situation. He would totally be there to mess. He would not be on Annie's side because he's horrible.
No, but he's touched in the end. At the
but he's a
end of the
psychopath.
day, but at the end of the day, his evil right now, like his villain right now is Lavinia, and Lavinia hates the touched. So he's going to, weirdly enough, I feel like he's going to pull his sister's entire storyline on himself. He's going to pretend to like be one of the touch, pretend to be on the touch side to get his sister out of the way. And then once his sister's out of the way, he's going to go back to like his evil controlling self that we saw Lavinia do this season, but we wouldn't expect would come from Augie, and that's where the big betrayal comes from. Season 3.
Yeah, that would be way better. Yeah, fair play. I'll give you that one. And then the episode wraps up with Amalia making her one appearance for the episode. Can't lie, I actually completely didn't realise she hadn't been in the episode until she was in the episode. Walking into a bar, because where else would Amalia go? And the bar seems to be stocked entirely with other versions of her, including, Claudia Black. And yeah, that's a strong place to end, and hopefully the opening scene of episode 11 will be them having a bit of a chinwag and not just repeating the story from last time, because we don't need that.
My notes for this episode was like, where is Amalia? And then for us to finally see her as she goes into the bar, I was like, we don't have time for this. We have so many things going on right now. Bonfire is completely correct.
To visit the bar.
Why are we drinking? I was like, we have a war on the horizon. I was so mad. And then to see like all the different versions of her.
What if that was just the end of Amalia? Like, she never came back. Like, she just drowned, and that was the end of that storyline.
I mean, at this point, how many times have we seen Amalia come out of water as a new
4 or
person?
5.
Or as like, yeah, like a good half of the last 2 seasons, if you want to combine these two. We've seen her come out of the water and have like a switch up in character a little bit, and either like her character is being pushed forward or she's being like stuck where she still is. Which I guess if you want to take like a biblical sense, she's being like baptized every time she comes back out, and same thing happened to Molly D this time, and she came out as Sarah.
It's a definite ongoing theme of rebirth and reinvention in this episode, but also just the series in general.
Okay, so you guys want to talk about themes and symbolism? I feel like we kind of talked about it roundabout, but there's the power of dreams and visions. There's the consequences of revenge, manipulation, power, politics, identity, purpose. You know, the regular ones.
Yeah, the old familiar fables. Yeah. I have a distinct suspicion episode 11 is going to delve quite deeply into the manipulation of power and politics. Because like it's clear that Masson and his arc is coming to its head, and that's going to very much be about him getting that bill passed, and we're going to see just how horrifically corrupt the whole system is, which we don't really need to be pointed out to us. You just need to watch the news to see that, but it's fine. His whole kind of Knights of the Round Table are going to feature heavily and hopefully all be
I think it's very
Maddie.
interesting that without even fully seeing it on screen, we've kind of seen the fall of Lord Mason. Like, we saw the fall of Mundy pretty well, and then even the fall of Hugo kind of, like, from first season to now. And then now Lord Mason, he doesn't have as much power as what we saw, like, in the beginning of the episode or even, like, season 1, because like, there's that scene where he's talking to Lavinia and they were like, oh, he says, they've said I've overstepped my bounds. Where before, you wouldn't think that someone had the audacity to speak to Mason in that kind of way. And then there's that scene, which was like a couple episodes ago, when he's talking about like the strict eradication of the touched, and they were like, is this about your daughter? And I was like, wow, like, way for them to just like push Mason down, like disrespect him continuously.
Disrespect.
And I think in episode 11, if he does try to use Lavinia's gift that she's given him to like fully pass the bill, I think they're going to use another thing to bring him down, either the reveal of his daughter through Hugo now that she's out of the cell. Either they're going to lose like control of her or whatever, and she's going to be revealed to the masses, and then that'll happen, or it's going to be like, Mason, you're crazy. Like, where are you getting these pictures from? Like, this has to be fabricated. I don't think it's going to go as smoothly as we think it is going to go. Specifically, if you have the orphanage also running to the courthouse now to, like, protect their... whatever words... trying to like protect their future or whatever. So I think it's not going to go as smoothly, and I think it's just going to put Mason in his place even more. And I think with his daughter now on the loose, and I think he's going to lose his power. I think he's not as strong as we've seen him recently.
He's definitely taken a few hits in the past. That kind of this half of the season has not been particularly kind to poor old Lord Masson. But I mean, I've kind of referenced this a few times. He is very much just like the embodiment of the establishment. He's old money. He's deep in politics. He's like real governmental type. And one of the themes of this show has really been kind of the end of the old order and the start of the new. So I do think, while I was initially very much thinking that his bill was going to pass and that was going to be kind of the impetus for the big final showdown, you may very well be right in that this is actually going to be the final nail in Masson's coffin, and this is going to be kind of the end of the era of kind of old rich men in suits dictating everything, and that's all going to just collapse, and then we're going to have kind of the Hugos and the Mundys of the world kind of establishing a new order. Which,
I mean, that could be true. That could be like completely true, seeing as Hugo's dad is dead now, and that was like probably one of the few people Mason really had left on his side. And now if he gets like shown as a mockery in court or whatever it's going down, then that is the last nail in his coffin, and at that point he kind of loses his cred, his street cred that he used to have.
I think his daughter's gonna kill him.
You think?
Yeah, I think his daughter's going to kill him, and I think all of those council dudes are going to see that happen, and they're going to get afraid and pass the bill. And I think that's going to cause a big war to happen between everybody, and then that's probably the climax. But that's just the easiest prediction to make. Hopefully they throw some twists in there.
That would make a lot, like, he puts his bill forward and it's like, I have pictures, look at these pictures, they're scary. And they're like, they're not scary, they're pictures, you're a moron. And so his bill is defeated, and then he's kind of leaving in shame, gets attacked and murdered by his daughter in front of the full parliament. Like, the House of Lords all see one of their own get ripped apart by the touch. And they're like, yeah, okay, maybe he had a point, let's pass that bill, let's rectify that. And then that causes chaos. That would be...
I mean, that goes into our theme of seeking revenge, because if I was Mason's daughter, I also would seek revenge for being shut away in a cellar for 3+ years at this point, and have your father not even once like acknowledge your existence, and instead tell everyone that you've died, and your only friend being like the maid who's basically been rallying for your father not to kill you for the last 3 years. I also thought that scene when he was going to shoot his daughter and couldn't do it, and instead was going to shoot her through the closed doors, couldn't do it, and then instead decided to give like a poison to the servant to give his daughter. I was like, wow, way to cop it out. Like, you had one job. If you're gonna kill your daughter, like, do it yourself. Man up and do it yourself if you're really gonna do it. And the fact that she like lashes out and pushes her spikes through the door was very nice to see. And now she's on the loose with Hugo, of all people, who could put her into like his little fireman club. And now look what's happened. Although I don't think he would do that. I don't think he would do that to her with the whole father-child history that he has. Like, I don't think he would actually do that to Lily, because he'd probably feel like a more parental, like, has to protect her after everything kind of thing towards her.
Yeah, it'll be a very kind of Din Grogu relationship. Like, I've got to protect her, guard her through this encroaching mess of nonsense that's about to be unleashed upon the world. We actually have a listener's letter for everyone today. This is an email from Caleb. He says, "Hey there, podcast hosts. I just had to drop you a line and give you a big shout out to the amazing fan community of the Nevers. I mean, seriously, kudos to them for going all out on the online petition to score a second season. I've been a bit out of the loop lately, so I'm curious. Have you guys been keeping tabs on the numbers of signatures they've managed to rack up?" We'll stop there and answer that and then move on to the next part. I have not been keeping up because I actually missed it the first time and only signed it quite recently, but I haven't seen what the number's up to right now. Have either of you been paying attention to any of that?
I haven't kept my eye on it ever since like I signed it and shared it, and I was kind of like wishing you the best, go little rock star kind of moment, but I haven't kept my eye on it. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's still moving up.
Yeah, my general philosophy in life is hopelessness, so I don't tend to keep track of anything of that nature.
Funnily enough, that moves quite on handily to Caleb's second question, or the second part of his first question. Anyway, I've been pondering the whole concept of online petitions to save shows, and I wanted to pick your brains on this. Do you think there's a glimmer of hope for the Nevers to find a new home on streaming giants like Amazon or Netflix? I'd love to hear your take on it, and hey, even if that doesn't work out, what do you think about the idea of continuing the story through comic books? Would that be something you'd be down for? Of course, I totally get that the current season's finale might have an impact on the possibilities, but hey, I'm curious to hear your thoughts nonetheless. Firstly, I would believe in online petitions a lot more if any of them actually ever did anything. I mean, I've signed so many, and I always really hope that this one will pay off. But it didn't work for the OA, it didn't work for that other show I signed a petition for, and honestly, I very highly doubt it's going to work for this. I feel like Veronica Mars was brought back, but not because of a petition, just because the fans wouldn't shut up about bringing Veronica Mars back. So they were like, you know what, fine, just take it. Obviously, the Snyder Cut being a big version, but
I feel like the Nevers was sabotaged. Because, like, with the whole, like, we talked about this, like, the first episode, the fact that you can't find the last 6 episodes, the fact that it was only aired on Tubi for, like, the randomest time frame that you could choose from like 11 to 6, and then never seen again. And then after that, no one really talks about the Nevers anymore, other than the people that have watched the show and have continued to watch the show. So I don't think that it could move on to a different, like, platform, specifically because we didn't even really get the cancellation announcement. It was kind of just straight silence, and then it was like, oh, here's the last 6, had a great time, we had our goodbyes from all of the actors, and then, like, that was it kind of thing. Like, I feel like the actors have, like, checked out of it. I feel like the way the last 6 episodes have disappeared, it's kind of been like, this is the end of the Never. It's been fun, it's been grand, but, like, we're not going to pick it up. There's so many theories and ways that it could expand into a different season, but I don't think it would actually happen. And I feel like the only way that petitions have actually succeeded, like, if you watch Sense8, the only reason we got, like, the movie ending was because the people, the fans, were rallying and literally spamming Netflix and their petitions, like, every day, that Netflix had to come out with, like, multiple announcements being like, we did it because of the budget. And we were like, that doesn't make sense. The budget doesn't make sense. And then they were like, okay, well, I guess you can have this 2-hour finale to, like, curve, like, the hate that we were getting. Where now that we have the last 6, I don't think like another, whether it be like Netflix or whatever, it would be like, yeah, let's just pick up where you guys left off. By the way, we heard you hated the last 6 episodes. Let's just like scratch that, start again, give you a brand new season. Yeah. Like, I don't think it would work the same.
No. I wouldn't be surprised though if they gave it a year, maybe 2, and then we saw a comic come out from. It wouldn't be from Marvel or DC. It would be like Image or maybe is it Boom that do the Buffy comics? I think it is.
Dark Horse.
Like, they did the original one, and there was a new run that's still ongoing. That I think is on Boom.
Oh, okay.
It kind of from one of those companies. Suspicious. It's not called The Nevers, but it's a suspiciously similar story about people in Victorian London who are suddenly developing powers, written by Was Jedon. And it just kind of, it treads some similar paths and maybe ignores these 6 episodes because they are non-canon, and just kind of gives us a different idea of how things might have gone if more time had been had.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised at any of it.
Also, we don't know, like, HBO's contract with Weldon or just the show in general of like if they could create more episodes now that it's off the network, because I know with Netflix,
I mean, they kind of have their own problems right now.
Yeah.
I don't know how, because the Nevers is not the only show experiencing this. Across the entire entertainment landscape, TV shows are being disappeared like Edward Snowden's. It's just like a Disney Plus recently released a bunch of TV shows that were like the Willow show. It's gone. Like, there's no trace of its existence anymore. You can't find it on Amazon. You can't find it on Disney Plus. You can't buy it, rent it. Where do the hours of all of that hard work go?
Yeah.
It's just gone.
That was a whole thing, like, early this year, last year. I know a lot of people were petitioning because a lot of, like, cartoon shows were leaving, and then people were like, but we'll never see them again. Where are the hard work? And then, writers and producers were like, this is why we tape everything. This is why you have your own hard copies. And now shows like this are just disappearing, which is so sad. I didn't know you couldn't find Willow anywhere anymore. I was going to watch that, even though I heard it canceled.
I'm a little bit upset about that being cancelled. I thought the first season wasn't great, but it had bags of potential. They were setting up to do some good things. I was quite upset when that got cancelled.
Also, with the writer's strike now, who knows, like, how anything's going to go.
Yeah, all this to say to Caleb, I think you should give up. And,
not give
just
up.
Just be sad.
No retreat, no surrender.
Just enjoy what you have.
Yeah.
Enjoy what you have. Be happy that we even got a part 2.
True.
And, like, I don't know. If you do make a comic, Caleb, I'm sure that the Nevers fandom will watch it and read it, etc.
So he wraps up the email that bit I probably should have read at the start, just saying, thanks for giving us a space to dive into these topics. Your analysis and insights always keep me hooked. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Take care and keep rocking. Warm regards, Caleb Mitchell. Thanks for contacting us, Caleb, and sorry for reading that last bit hours afterwards. But yeah, great letter, and I mean, I think he made a lot of good points, and I think we can all agree that we would enjoy more from this universe. But the problem is, I think if you're going to, for a show to be picked up by a kind of rival, if you could use the term network, and kind of move to a new streaming service, there has to be a huge, focused, concerted push. And the Nevers just didn't really have the fandom for that. There's a handful of people that seem to have really loved the first 6, sort of enjoyed the second 6, but there just doesn't seem to be the real kind of push to get, I can't really see Amazon or Netflix spending the money really to pick up a vaguely poisoned franchise when they could just spend that money developing their own show.
I mean, look at the Warrior Nun fandom. I feel like they've been trending on Twitter for months now, and their show got canceled how many months ago? And the chances of them actually getting renewed are so much higher than the chances of the Nevers actually getting renewed. And that is with the last 6 episodes being released in February.
So, do you have any final thoughts on the episode? I think we've made our feelings pretty clear about this, but is there anything else that you want to kind of put across?
I think this episode... Do you guys like do you guys like this episode compared to like the last couple of episodes? Would you say this is like one of the best episodes this season or not the best episode this season?
I'd say it was a very strong episode. Not sure it was my favourite, but it was a huge step up from like the first 2, which I found painfully boring. Sorry. But yeah, it was good. Like, I wasn't, jumping in my seat with excitement, but there was no point when I sort of drifted off and wanted to, check my social media. So that's a plus.
Yeah, it was, I think, the best cookie in the batch so far, but also the other ones are like basically just raw dough. So the fact that this one felt edible, I think, made it the best one.
I heard episode 11
so
is
far.
really good so far.
I have heard that too.
That's what people have been saying under like the comments for the Twitter page. So I'm really excited for that one.
Same.
I'm looking forward to seeing Amalia emerge from the water again next episode.
She has 2 more episodes to do it at least 2 more times.
Yeah. So, speaking of, do you have, other than Amalia emerging from at least 1, if not 2 bodies of water, what are your predictions for these last 2 episodes?
Like we said, Augie's probably gonna escape and go full evil. I think that I don't know what's gonna happen to Malady. I think she's gonna go back to finding the Galanthi and whatever her mission is for that. And I think that Penance is probably gonna find the Galanthi first with Haig and create something to either contain it, harness like its powers, and unleash like a weapon, or I don't know. And then we're gonna have a huge war between the Purifiers, Lavinia, and like the Shock Troopers, all that. And then the weapon that Penance makes is going to like destroy everything. And then we're gonna wake up in the future, and it's either gonna be really good or really bad, depending on if the Galanthi survive or not.
That's pretty fair. Yep. I think we're definitely going to get full dark side Augie, who may or may not be redeemed by Penance. We're definitely going to have some weird shit between Penance and Haig, which is going to be fun. I have a feeling Lord Maston's bill is going to pass, but not in a way he expects. And then there's going to be a full-on 15-minute, no-holds-barred sequence of Hugo and Mundy just going to town.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
That would be great.
Because this is
I would
HBO.
expect that, actually.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, to be honest.
Yeah, the last episode is a 45-minute sex scene.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, Mundy, you've never loved me. And then, boom.
Oh, so thank you for listening. We would like to encourage more listener feedback and more discussion, and we would like to discourage hope. I don't know if we got that across. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at HBO The Nevers, and on Twitter at HBO The Nevers Podcast. And comments or questions you can email to theneverspodcast@gmail.com. I would like to thank Taig and Tanisha for joining today, and I would like to invite them to share their socials.
Sure. So thank you for having me. It's been a blast as usual. But you can always find me on all my socials at Show Talk Podcast. If you want to send me an email, you can always do it at showtalkpodcast@gmail.com. And on every socials audio site. That's where you could find me the same way, where I talk about The Nevers and everything else that is sci-fi, cool, and should not be cancelled.
DOA. Greatest show of the last 10 years. If you want to find me, I am on Twitter at TheHoundReacts, which I really need to change. And then if you want to email me, please don't. Always a pleasure to talk Nevers with you guys, and I can't wait to dig into these last 2 episodes.
You think Augie would be on Twitter? I feel like the birds represent all of the tweets. I think it's an elaborate metaphor.
Augie would be on Twitter, but he would be really, really bad at it. And then Hugo would be on Twitter, would be the king of Twitter, and would constantly just troll Augie.
Yeah. I think Penance would be on Twitter for sure.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.
This episode of the Nevers Podcast was written, produced, and edited by Matthew at Culture Inject Studios. The intro and outro music was produced by Guilherme Moraes. We are more than just a podcast. We're a fan community. You can keep up to date on the Nevers and chat with other fans by visiting hbothenevers.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search HBO The Nevers, all one word, and click that follow button. The Nevers Podcast is not endorsed by Mutant Enemy, Warner Media Entertainment, or any of its subsidiaries, including Home Box Office, HBO, and is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. The Nevers and all names, pictures, and audio clips are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective copyright holders.